So, selecting a major in engineering school is probably one of the most important things you can do. It's not something that is really a big deal to worry about, at least within the first 2 years, maybe 3 years, depending on what kind of engineering school you go to. But what's really important is knowing what you are interested in, because a lot of these majors, even as specific as they get, are pretty tied to what you'll be doing after the fact. And one thing that a lot of people sort of get, I guess, sort of confused with or get kind of tripped up on is their real interests and what they actually want to do after college, what their actual interests are, like when they're not studying, what they really want to do. And aside from the fact of what they want to study, I mean, generally speaking, you want to be really interested in what you study. And I know firsthand that initially when I started college at Northeastern University, which is a great private engineering school, that I definitely needed to make some changes. So in my instance, I started out as a mechanical engineer. I liked the fact that it was really broad. It was pretty general, so I could do a lot of different things. I could do anything from work for SpaceX, doing engine design. I could work for Ducati. I could go work for an industrial design firm, or if all else failed, I could basically do shitty civil engineering work and design HVAC and roads. So it was pretty broad, and what I found was I kind of got a knack for servers and Python stuff, and it didn't. I actually recommend sticking with your major or your intended major path for like at least a year. Making a major change within the first, even 2 months of being in college, I think is a really rash decision. Because even though you might think you really know what you're doing, quite frankly, you don't. So like wait at least a year, and at least in my case, I figured out that I was skipping physics lectures to doodle around Python and work on Python projects and server stuff, as opposed to doing physics, and that's what I was interested in. I was way more interested in doing really cool embedded stuff, and just essentially electrical or computer engineering things that were not mechanically oriented at all. And what I found was I'd sort of fooled myself into thinking that, oh, well, doing this mechanical stuff would be awesome. And to be really honest, what it came down to, I wasn't bad at physics. I could still pull an A in physics. But I didn't enjoy it. And if I was going to sit down and work through some complex physics problem, that would be harder, and I'd probably need more help doing that than if I had to sit down and solve some programming problem that I could, given enough time, get through and truly understand. And I just like doing it more. So that's what it came down to. And long story short, within the third week of my second year of college, I changed my major to computer engineering. So again, this is going to segue into changing your major, and given enough time and really aligning what you're really interested in with what you're studying, I think is just an amazing thing to figure out. And it all comes down to actually having interests. I think you'd be surprised how many people end up in engineering school with no real interests, which I think is funny. But so yeah, I mean, there are a few things to consider. What your real interests are, what you enjoy doing in your own free time, how that relates to what you're studying, and really if you're happy doing what you're studying, and also if you hate yourself while you're doing things. Like I like physics, like the idea of it, and I'm relatively good at it, but I hate doing it. And it got to a point where I was like, well, I hate doing this. Eventually, even if I'm not doing physics all day long, a lot of mechanical engineering stuff is grounded in physics, so why on earth would I want to do that? So I guess my advice here is go with whatever you think you're doing. Do not go in undecided. Just don't do that. If you get into an engineering school, don't decide you want to be undecided engineering, because a lot of times engineering schools will think that you might just not know what you're doing. And a lot of times if you select that, even if you've been accepted into an engineering school, you won't actually be into the school until you select a major. And usually there are requirements, like you have to have a higher GPA to maintain being in the engineering school as undecided, even through your second year. I, for instance, know people at Northeastern who have had to maintain an idiotically high GPA just to stay in the engineering school, just because they came in as undecided engineering, not even just undecided. So there's that, and really just it's what you're happy doing. Quite frankly, if you're even if you really want to do something, if you genuinely don't like it that much, I think you probably should make a change. I mean, some people can really slam through it, but I can definitely say it is night and day when I switch my major. Because now, you know, what I wanted to do in my free time, I can now study. So now I actually have an incentive to study, and I can excel at what I'm doing. It also came down to me thinking, well, I could be a really shitty mechanical engineer and just get by. I could still be a mechanical engineer, just not be the best. Or I could excel and be one of the best computer engineers at, my university. So there are a lot of factors. If you're applying and you just have to like check a box as to what you think your major should be, look through, the majors. I'm making an entire series of videos, which are fastest possible majors. So it's essentially the most concise way to go about looking at all the different engineering majors, ranging all the way from mechanical, to electrical to civil, all of those. And to get it as right as you think it's possible, stick with it for at least a year. And then after the fact, if you think you need to make a change, and generally speaking, with the general classes you take the first few years, it isn't an issue. And if you want to make a change, make the change. I only changed my major once, so I don't really think I'm going to change it again. But I know people who've changed it 2 or 3 times, and it doesn't really matter. Even if it's a bit more expensive, if in the end you're doing something you really want to do, that's more important. So that was generally how I would go about, selecting majors and advice I give to you guys. And definitely rate and subscribe. If there are things you did like about this, let me know. If there are things you didn't like, let me know so I can make these videos better. And yeah, have a good day, guys.